seasonal cheesecake, a nice glass of beer after a long day of hiking, and layered chocolate cake with drunk cherries. This week, we're in the Black Forest of Germany.
Traveling the world to bring you delicious dishes, tasty beverages, and interesting experiences. This is the Destination Eat Drink podcast on the Radio Misfits Podcast Network.
I'm Brent Peterson. Welcome to Destination Eat Drink, the travel podcast for foodies. Destination Eat Drink is for foodies who like to travel and travelers who love to eat, because the best part of any trip is the food. And this week, we're in Germany's Black Forest with YouTuber Ashton Schottler. But first, take a minute to rate and review Destination Eat Drink on your podcast app. It just takes a minute, and your 5 stars helps other foodie travelers just like yourself find the show. And if you're thinking about a trip to Italy this year, I've got a bunch of foodie travel guide ebooks available for off-the-beaten-path destinations in Puglia and Abruzzo. From Lecce, one of my all-time favorite cities, to Bari, where they have the most incredible street food. It's my latest guide to Scano and Sulmona in the Apennine Mountains. I've got all the best things to eat and drink, all the best things to do in all of these places. You can download yours at buymeacoffee.com/destinationeatdrink, and thank you very much. Ashton Schottler is the brains behind the entertaining and informative YouTube channel Type Ashton. She also maintains the blog blackforestfamily.com. Ashton's also an educator with a doctorate in human geography. She tells me how she ended up in Germany, hint, hint, it was love, and what her life is like there. Navigating German culture while learning the language, panicking when the phone rings, I can relate to that, and lots of daily bike rides. We also talk about new food experiences like the famous Black Forest cake, sausages, potato salad, seasonal cheesecake, and I'm starving, so let's eat.
Destination Eat Drink.
Ashton Schottler of the YouTube channel Type Ashton and blackforestfamily.com. Welcome to Destination Eat Drink. We're going to talk about the Black Forest and about Germany and your life there today, and I'm looking forward to it. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Ashton, you're from the United States, but you make your home now in the Black Forest of Germany. How did you actually end up there?
Yeah, I get this question all the time. It's kind of a funny circumstances. So prior to coming to Germany, I was a full-time instructional faculty at a university in the United States. And I say this part with a little bit of air quotes because it sounds funny, but I only had a master's degree. But in academia, that's not a terminal degree. So I knew I needed to go back and get my PhD at some point. But while I was teaching, I met my husband, who was already living here. And we did the super long distance thing for a long time. And then I kind of made a leap of faith and applied to the University of Freiburg, which is where I live now, and was fortunate enough to be accepted into a PhD program here, and then made the move abroad in 2018.
Your PhD is in human geography, so you're Dr. Ashton Schottler. But I'm curious because I haven't heard the term human geography. Can you tell me exactly what that is?
Sure. A lot of people don't. And I think it's interesting because I really love the subject of human geography because it's really all encompassing. So I should kind of back up a bit because my bachelor's and master's are actually in architecture and architectural studies. So I was really familiar with, how we build, right? That was what I was trained to do, was to, the physical action of buildings. But human geography is very much interested in sort of the symbiotic relationship with how humans shape the world around them and how the world around them shapes humans. And so in a way, architecture is linked to this because when we think about the development of cities, it's part of it's societal, part of it's cultural, part of it's political, part of it's economic, and part of that is also sort of the development in the physical form of what happens there. So my research specifically, however, was in political economic theory within human geography, and I looked at how politics and economics impact how and where we build low-income housing. That was the the nerdy, super specific like avenue of where I looked. But yeah, so going back to my background in architecture, it became very apparent that we talk a lot about, public policy and taxes. But I think a lot of people don't fully understand how intertwined those things are and the way that they shape the physical world and the allocation of public goods specifically. So yeah, sorry, that was kind of a rambling answer.
No, I like it. I like it a lot because it leads me to this question that I hadn't really thought of before.
Mm-hmm.
This is a travel and food podcast, but all of these issues to me,
Sure.
and I explain this on the podcast all the time, they're all intertwined with each other. They all go together in some way. And when you talk about low income housing, the first question that pops into my mind is, you as a person who's living in Germany, how does public policy influence public housing in Germany as compared to the United States? Because this is a huge issue. I'm not based in the United States, obviously, but I still family and friends are there, and I go there once a year to visit. So, I'm very entrenched in what's going on in the United States, and low income housing has been, and affordable housing for that matter, has been a huge issue for decades that has not been resolved yet. So I'm wondering, can you compare a little bit Germany to the United States on that issue?
Sure. I mean, on a very broad level, we have two very different methods of approaching public housing. In Germany, public housing is a public good in a much more pure sense of the term, I think. These are projects which are planned and funded and overseen much more holistically by the government. And that could be federal government, but it's much more done by the states and the cities, but it's a government endeavor. So you have planning agencies within cities that do the site analysis, that will go through the bidding and the planning but it's all very much overseen as a public project. Right. Very similar to, maybe think of them as like the way that like we approach roads and bridges, because that's still very kind of how it's done in the US to a degree with roads and bridges. But when it comes to housing, the US really got out of the business of building public housing back in the late 80s. I mean, truly. And I think that might shock a lot of Americans because they think of like the public housing projects. But by and large, the US builds public housing through private industry. And the vast majority of public housing units today are funded through something called the low-income housing tax credit, which is basically like how the government incentivizes private industry to build public housing projects, which I think might, like I said, I think maybe that might surprise a lot of Americans because they think that like Section 8 or the projects, as they're sort of colloquially known, or that's the government, but really it's mostly private industry that does it. And what's fascinating is, since we've sort of made this transition towards the privatization of public goods, the number of public housing units has gone down in terms of production. So we're producing less with private industry, not more, which I think is fascinating.
Ashton, one of my favorite videos you do, and I watch your channel a lot, I really enjoy it. Folks can check it out at Type Ashton on YouTube, is the one you did on fake food. And to get into this topic a little bit, first of all, I'd like you, because you're an academic, you live for things like defining things and putting them into boxes and stuff. So how do you define fake food when we talk about this?
Oh, so fake food is a very broad term, and it's not necessarily nefarious. It just simply means that it is food that is marketed or sold as one thing, but might actually be made of another thing. And what I mean by that is fake food can even be something as simple as the growth of vegan or vegetarian alternatives. Right. So the milk industry pushed back quite a bit on the idea that almond milk and oat milks were going to be labeled as milk. because to them, that's not real milk, that's fake milk. And so they wanted to have a monopoly on the term milk. You can apply that to things like cheese or different meats. But fake food can also be nefarious to a degree. It can be criminal in some cases. So it could be people who are selling a product that you believe as a consumer is legitimate. Maybe it's truffles, or maybe it is a certain type of cheese, but in reality, it's not that, or it's been altered in some way, shape, or form. But the video that I made on it really focuses in on the kind of fake foods that Europe specifically has pushed back on in terms of its regional or historical legacy. So here in much of the European Union, we have designated protections on certain foods, and that can be, again, because they're regionally important, traditionally important to some degree. So it can be things like wine, for example, champagne. To be marketed and sold as champagne can only come from the Champagne region of France, and to do so otherwise isn't just factually incorrect, it's illegal to do so. And there are mechanisms now where you can, bring legal action against someone who is improperly using that term. Here in the Black Forest, where I live, we have Schwarzwaldschinken, or Black Forest ham, that is also a regional protected food item. And if you were to sell something as Black Forest ham and it didn't come from the Black Forest region of Germany, that would technically be illegal to do so. But I would wager that much of the Black Forest ham sold at the supermarket in the United States, though, probably didn't come from here. So it's just a really interesting difference between the way that Europe has kind of protected a lot of their food goods versus the lack thereof, or at least the completely different approach to it in the United States. Because to my knowledge, there's only really a couple of items in the US that have somewhat similar of a protected designation, that being like Vidalia onions that come from Georgia and Kentucky bourbon.
Right, right. It's fascinating because it seems like Europe has taken a more protectionist attitude where they want to keep these agricultural products true to their location. In a lot of cases, that's where this DOP label comes from, if you see it on a product imported into the United States. Whereas the United States uses it more as a marketing tool. You'll see people call things hatch chilies. I started a farmer's market in our city, it's a town in Rhode Island, and I worked farmers markets in Texas. And you'd see people call things hatch chilies. Hatch chilies are really supposed to be from Hatch, New Mexico. That's why they're called hatch chilies. But everyone calls hatch chilies, whether they're from California or wherever, calls them hatch chilies because they were grown from those seeds to make that particular kind of chili. So that's kind of a geographical protection. But then for me, and this is a topic that I love to get into in my food blog, I've talked about it quite a bit, is a subcategory called food fraud rather than fake food fraud. This is where one food is masquerading as another, like it doesn't have anything to do with that original food. And I think of stuff like truffle oil, there's no real truffles in truffle oil. It's petroleum byproducts. Or most of the wasabi sold in the U.S. is not wasabi at all. It's horseradish and mustard and food coloring. And this to me is even more fascinating because this isn't like, you're in kind of a gray area when you're talking about things like hatch chilies or San Marzano tomatoes, for example. Like they're kind of the same thing, but they're not from that actual place. It's kind of like, okay, you're trying to skirt the rules a little bit here. But food fraud, I mean, that is intentional deception of the consumer.
Well, and I think that speaks to the continuum, right? That like fake food is a really large umbrella term, and there's different degrees of, what is kind of a bit more innocent or at least understandable mislabeling versus something that is intentionally trying to masquerade as something else. And it's not a black and white issue. And I think things like that is something that I really enjoy talking about on my channel, because I think, a lot of times we like simple answers to things, but sometimes the answers just aren't as clean cut as people would like to think. And I think we can often see both sides of an argument and two sides of the coin. And also thinking about how different countries approach regulating such things is really fascinating.
Ashton, your husband is a mechanical engineer. He designs bicycles. Cool job.
Yeah, much cooler than mine.
You must be cycling quite a bit. How's the biking in the Black Forest?
Fantastic. We love living here because of that. Just this morning, I dropped my kids off to school. We have a long tail school bus bike that I take them to school on. And
what does that mean, long tail school bus bike?
So it's a bit longer behind the back wheel, and there's kind of a platform that sits on top of it where kids can straddle the wheel and they'll hold on to sometimes there's like a ring around the back, or you might even be able to mount a couple of kid seats behind. But the idea is that rather than having the kids sit in front of you, like some of the bucket bikes that
I've seen
they
those.
have, like Urban Arrow, for example, the kids are back behind me. And they just kind of straddle the back wheel and sit as we go.
If I was a kid, I would have liked that one much better because Mom couldn't see me when I was raising hell with my brothers.
Well, they still, they do a bit of that in the mornings for sure.
So tell me a little bit more about the biking in the Black Forest.
Sure. The Black Forest area of Germany is just beautiful, and we're very lucky and fortunate to have a wonderful infrastructure of safe cycling options, whether that's completely separated bike paths or bike lanes on the streets, or even if you just want to go like bike out into some of the country roads up in the Black Forest. It's just stunning. Really, truly. And the other thing I've talked about a bit on my channel before too, especially as an American who now lives here, it's been such a culture shock to see what an impact the kind of investment in this kind of infrastructure makes on the overall safety of cycling, but also on the public buy-in when it comes to taking these kinds of modes of transportation. Because having this extensive of a network on some level just makes it so much of a no-brainer that everyone uses it and utilizes it. And then it also makes it to where, the people who drive cars and maybe aren't cycling that day, they're probably still cycling on the weekends, and they're participating in this network on their leisure time. And so when you're on a road and you're not on one of these separated bike paths, the people who are in cars are still consciously looking out for people on bikes. And so, it's just one of those things where as a mom now of two little kids, I feel a lot safer letting them bike independently around town. And it's a really wonderful experience.
Let's talk a little bit about some of these dishes that are regional to your area of the Black Forest. You won't mind if I start with dessert, will you? I'm sure you don't let your kids start with dessert, but I'm going to start with dessert if that's okay with you.
Go for it. Sure. Absolutely.
Now, you're going to have to forgive me. I assume you're fluent in German. I certainly am not, but you're going to have to excuse my pronunciations here, and feel free to correct me because I'm sure they're going to be way off. But Schwarzwälder Kirschtorte, or Black Forest cake. This is maybe one of the most famous dishes to come out of your region.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So it's for my German speaking listeners, it's Schwarzwälder Kirschtorte. And yeah, it's a literal, German is so literal. This word is literally, so Schwarzwälder, Black Forest, Kirsch, which is cherry, and Torte, which is cake. So Black Forest cherry cake. And it's delicious. It is a layered chocolate cake where there's layers of basically a chocolate cake and then a white cream that happens in the middle. For my American listeners, I kind of almost put it more like, I hope I don't make my German listeners angry, but it reminds me a bit more of like a whipped cream. So like a Cool Whip sort of center. It's not a cream in maybe like the buttercream sense. It's more of a lighter cream that they put between the layers of chocolate. And then there's usually a layer in the center of cherries that have traditionally been soaked in a liqueur. So if you really get the traditional one, it's kind of an adult cake, or it should be more of an adult cake because there might be a little bit of alcohol in it. And then it's usually topped with another layer of the whipped cream with some chocolate shavings on top and some beautiful cherries. Kind of, it's a beautiful cake to be presented with. And the Germans love to eat it as part of their Kaffee and Kuchenzeit afternoon, a coffee and cake break. And it's, yeah, one of my favorites.
Love it. What's your kids' favorite dessert?
So in Freiburg, one of their favorite things to eat actually is there's a local dish that's made by a company called Stefan's Käsekuchen. So it's cheesecake, but it's a bit different than the American cheesecake. It's not quite the same as like a New York style cheesecake where they have like a graham cracker crust. This is a bit of a difference, more of like a torte, a bit denser of a cheesecake, but they have some really lovely flavors like again, a cherry flavor. Right now in season is an apple cinnamon one. And what I love about Stefan's Käsekuchen, they have seasonal cheesecakes, which is really lovely. They make an effort to kind of rotate through some flavors throughout the year, depending on what is regionally in season. So you'll have like rhubarb or cherry or blueberries, depending on what kind of comes. They source them from local suppliers, which is really lovely and something that's very much appreciated.
All right. So when you go to the grocery store in Freiburg, you need to look for this cheesecake. It sounds delicious.
Yeah, they're at the farmers markets too.
Oh,
they have their own stand. It's great.
Oh, perfect. Oh, good. What about oh man, I'm just going to call it potato salad. you say that, you say the name Kartoffelsalat. I don't know.
Yeah, plus Kartoffelsalat. Yeah, it's great. Yeah, traditionally served cold. I know that like coming from the Midwest in the US, sometimes you'll have like a hot potato salad. It's at least here, not so much the case, has more of a vinegar base to it. It's good, yeah.
And tarte flambé, flammkuchen, couche? Oh.
Flammkuchen. Yeah, flammkuchen.
Flammkuchen.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have my A1s in German before this episode is over, Ashton.
You're great. Yeah, no. So flammkuchen is I mean, literally, it's like a flame cake, but it's not. It's more so. It's closer to a pizza. So you have a thin. It's very thin crust. And at least in our area, the Alsacer Flammkuchen is what is really popular. So instead of a red sauce, there's like a crème fraîche base, and then it's topped with Speck or bacon, essentially, bacon and red onions, and it's delicious, very good.
It sounds good. When you guys are cooking at home, do you guys cook German dishes? Do you cook American dishes? Do you cook a combination of them? What's it like in your household?
Ooh, combination of things. I would say that when we go out and eat, there's so many really wonderful German dishes that we're quite lucky to be able to eat them from kind of the local source, and they make it much better than I probably would. But we eat a nice collection of things at home. I like a lot of really spicy foods. So in that regard, it's probably a little less traditional German in that sense. But yeah.
So when you go out to eat, what's your favorite thing to order? And do you have a favorite place to go that you might want to recommend?
Oh, okay. So if you ever find yourself in the Black Forest, the high Black Forest, and you're looking for a place to eat, there is a beautiful lake in the Black Forest called the Schluchsee. That's kind of known for like vacationers in the summertime anyway. And on the lake, you can take this like lovely boat ride that takes you all the way around the lake. And one of the stops on that boat ride is to the Unterkrumenhof, which is a old farmstead that has been converted into a restaurant now. And it's very popular because you can either come by the boat, but hikers and cyclists will stop there as well in the summer. And they have just this beautiful farm that overlooks the lake and great food, great views. There's like a playground for kids there. and still some of the animals around. So it's just like a wonderful place to be. So that would be my recommendation if anybody is ever in the area.
Sounds idyllic.
It is. It's really lovely. They have a really nice rotation of foods. They don't have, they have specials of the day, and usually that's like can't go wrong with one of their like a Wurst, obviously, that like the Germans are known for. They hand make their own sausages there. But a tried and true favorite is, of course, Käsespätzle, which is like probably more of like a kiddie dish when it comes to it's not very over refined palate, but it's delicious. And it's essentially Spätzle is closer to it's not quite a dumpling, but it's, if you would imagine an in between a dumpling and a noodle. So they're kind of egg based with flour, and sort of these small pieces about this big, and then it's mixed with a cream and cheese mixture, and you can usually get it topped with bacon and onions, which is really great. Always a good crowd pleaser.
Bacon, onions, dumplings. I mean,
oh yeah,
delicious. You got all the major food groups right there.
Right. Well, and to be fair, if you spend the day like hiking or cycling out in the Black Forest, you don't really need to worry about like
you deserve it, man.
Food here.
You earned it. You totally
earned it, right?
Yeah. What will we wash this down with? A beer, some wine? What would you enjoy with it?
Ooh. So if you were actually at the Unterkrumenhof, you could of course get a glass of wine, but you're also very, very close to the Rothaus Brewery. So it's one of the state breweries that it's here, and they have like up in the Black Forest. It's always good to go with a good Hefeweizen, or like a wheat beer. An unfiltered wheat beer is always good. But if you were to get a wine, I find that in our region, the white wines are what really sing. It's what I think the climate is best suited for. Not to say you can't find a good red wine, but the whites are really good. So Grauburgunder or a Weissburgunder wine are usually the ones that people tend to lean towards.
You mentioned the Wursts, and am I got this correct? Is there a Freiburg version of Wurst that you guys specifically enjoy there? And what is it exactly?
Yeah, so it's called the Lange Rote, or the Long Red.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The Long Red. It's
funny name.
So if you think of it's very descriptive. Again, right. German's a very literal language.
Yeah, it's totally literal. Great.
Yeah. So, if you think about more of a traditional bratwurst, those are going to be shorter and thicker. The Long Red is much more closer to, in German, we call it a Wienerle, which is a long hot dog style sausage. But the Lange Rote in Freiburg is sort of it's sausage that you can especially get at the Freiburger Münstermarkt, which is the market that happens around the cathedral in the city center. There's usually a few different stands that sell it, and grilled, then usually cut in half, served on a bread roll. And they'll usually ask you if you want it topped with grilled onions. They like their onions here, which I always say yes. That and a bit of mustard, and it's very good.
Perfect. How is your German? I mean, did you stay German in the U.S. at all, or have you just picked it up on the fly here? What have you done to get your German up to par?
Well, I think it would be generous to say that my German is up to par, because if I'm going to be 100% honest, my husband and I both come from the United States, and we speak English exclusively at home, and I work from home as a YouTuber. So my exposure here is really just with my friends when I'm out and about, or interacting with my kids as teachers at school and things of that nature. I am kind of in the intermediate stages with my German. So B2 is my official certification in German. I took, when I met my now husband, but I was still in the United States, I took a year and a half of German language classes in sort of a preparation for eventually coming over. And then when I did move to Germany, I took a 6-month intensive integration course. But in my experience, the best way to learn German is to be around people who speak it. And when you hear it frequently, it really truly helps. So working at the university and doing my studies there, my research was in English, but all of our weekly meetings, faculty meetings, all the discussions with my advisor, all of those happened in German. And so you're sort of pushed into the deep end, so to speak, in a sink or swim kind of scenario.
I think that immersion is really the best way. If you want to learn, is really the best way. Here for me in Portugal, we've been here 4 years now, and we took the classes and, got my A2 certification. But the reality is that when I go into the market or when I'm interacting with, friends and things like that, they want to speak English, and Portugal has one of the highest English proficiencies in all of the EU, in all the world, really. So people are excited to speak English with a native English speaker. And as it seems, I feel like as soon as I walk in somewhere, they immediately, have me identified. I stick out like a sore thumb, like, oh, American. And I don't even have to open my mouth and they're talking English to me. So the reason I'm telling you this is because it becomes a little bit more difficult to become immersed in it, because the Portuguese are so interested in speaking English to you. So I'm doing my best, but it ain't easy. And I sound like I'm blaming the Portuguese for my lack of Portuguese language skills, but the fact is it's 100% on me.
Well, that happens to a degree in Germany as well. So especially living in Freiburg, which is a university city, English is extraordinarily common. In Germany as well, English is usually a prerequisite for entering university. So anyone who has a university degree is likely going to also speak English. And I mean, as an expat or now immigrant who lives here, there's a certain degree of safety that provides you when you come from an English speaking country, because in a pinch, in an emergency, there's probably going to be somebody around who can understand you. But for me, one of the more interesting interactions I had it was fairly soon after I moved here. So my German still wasn't that great. I got a part-time job working at an architecture firm, doing all the architecture drawings for them. And one of my jobs was I'd have to go off to the job sites and measure these really old buildings and houses and then convert them into CAD. And so I'd be going off into the deep Black Forest. And there you're going to sometimes run into a dialect called Schwäbisch, which at that point, it's not even German anymore. It is so just coming from a place in I couldn't understand it. And I was coming into, working alongside a lot of the craftsmen and the different industry professionals on that site, and really kind of thrown into full German and oftentimes dialects that I really wasn't as familiar with. In those cases, I'm sure I know I stumbled quite a bit because it was overwhelming at times.
Yeah, it's, I think people underestimate how difficult it really is. I mean, even 4 years in, I feel comfortable enough ordering in restaurants and talking to shopkeepers and, just basic interactions. I can, a couple of sentences I can get through. And then if they speak slowly enough, we can have a sort of a conversation. But, if I go to a doctor's appointment or something, I am going 100% in English because I don't want there to be any confusion about what we're actually talking about, because I misunderstand a verb or something,
Well, and I don't mean to scare you with this, but at least in my experience, and again, I've only been here not terribly much longer than you, but after 7 years of living in Germany, I still get the anxiety-ridden panic when I see my phone start ringing and I don't know who it is. It's a phone number that I don't recognize, because immediately my brain goes, here we go. Because, at least when you're face to face with somebody, there's body language, context of where you are. Whereas I see my phone call ring, and even being B2, I still am sitting back going, oh God, okay, here we go. Hello?
If the phone rings, I have no chance. If they don't speak, I have no chance, because the Portuguese, it comes out so fast and I'm like, forget it. I'm just like, fala inglés. There's no chance. So, Ashton, what do you got coming up on your channel? What are you working on right now? You want to give us a little taste?
Sure. Well, especially if this is like the Eat Drink podcast, my next video actually is on sugar and looking at sugar consumption. So that's been a fun little deep dive to go down. There's been some quite infamous attempts in the US to limit sugar consumption. The most famous one was probably when the then Mayor Bloomberg of New York tried to put in the sugar ban or the soda ban, where you couldn't buy sodas that were over a certain size. They also tried to do a tax in Chicago, 2016 maybe. That failed and was repealed. But it's really interesting because we often talk about the differences between the American diet and the European diet. And a huge one is obviously the consumption of sugary beverages. And that's been something that I've noticed as someone who lives abroad, is there just seems to be a little bit of a difference in palate, and as well as preferences of the size, as well as the sugar content of things. There's been quite a other few viral videos that other YouTubers have done where they're just even comparing like cereals and the amount of sugar that's in the same brand of cereal between what's sold in the UK and the EU versus what's sold back in the United States. And so in this video, I talk about those differences, like, is there really a difference and how substantial is that difference? But then why does that difference exist? And then what kinds of regulatory things are happening here versus the US that contribute to those differences?
I'm looking forward to that one very much. That's right up my alley.
Thanks.
So I can't wait.
Well, great.
Well, Ashton Schottler, it's been great talking to you. If folks want to see your YouTube videos, and they should, I'm a subscriber.
Thank you.
Go to YouTube and type Ashton in the search bar, or just youtube.com/@type Ashton. Also, you've got your blog, blackforestfamily.com. People should check that out as well. Ashton Schottler, pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for sharing all this with us today about the Black Forest in Germany and your life there on the podcast.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's been a delight talking to you.
Okay, that's Ashton Schottler from Type Ashton and blackforestfamily.com. Check out her great YouTube channel at youtube.com/Type Ashton. I watch every episode when it comes out, and it is so informative. I love her perspective. And just as a side note, after we conducted this interview, Ashton and her family came to Portugal. Ashton was running in the Lisbon Marathon, so we met up for a coffee. I met her in person, IRL, along with her delightful family. It was a really, really nice time sitting with her and enjoying a coffee in Lisbon. If you want to hear more of my conversation with Ashton, I have the full interview available to my Substack members. Ashton tells me more about the housing policy differences between Germany and the U.S., and we talk about biking and biking infrastructure in both Germany and here in Portugal, plus food that knows no borders. Hear that by becoming a member of my Substack at destinationeatdrink.substack.com. Well, that's it for this week. Next week, we are in Kyoto, Japan for a unique take on sushi, high-end Japan sake, and pickled tea leaves. You don't want to miss that. Until then, check out all the food and travel at destinationeatdrink.com. I just posted a new video about a hidden gem city called Alassio on the Italian Riviera. There's a special local cookie there and one of my favorite aperitivo bars in the whole region. You can see that by clicking on the video tab at destinationeatdrink.com or head over to my YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/@destinationeatdrink946. I also posted a brand new story. This one is about a candy called confetti. They've been making it in Sulmona, Italy for 500 years. Read about it at destinationeatdrink.com/blog. And speaking of Sulmona, there's also a new food and travel guide ebook available. It's to the towns of Scano and Sulmona, 2 towns, 1 ebook. It's where they have a soup made with wild forage spinach, a pastry named for a local bear, and a delightful, characteristic bar. Download your copy of the Scano and Sulmona Food and Travel Guide at buymeacoffee.com/Destination Eat Drink, and thank you very much. Destination Eat Drink is distributed by the Radio Misfits Podcast Network and Ed Silla. Thanks, Ed. I'm Brent Peterson, and I will see you down the road.
Join us next week for another culinary adventure on Destination Eat Drink, a presentation of the Radio Misfits Podcast Network.